Girivaradhari. Yashodanandana Prajajanaranjana. Yashodanandana Prajajanaranjana. Yamunatira Vanachari. Yamunatira Vanachari. Jayo Radha Madhava Radha Madhava Radhe. Jaya Radha Madhava Radha Madhava Radha Madhava Shri Radhe. Jaya Kodanitai Mayapur Shashi Jaya Kodanitai Mayapur Shashi. Nitai Gaura Haribo, 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 Nitai Gaura Haribo. Jayam Vishnupad Paramahamsa Paravrajikacharya Asto Tarasata Sushamadas Divine Grace of Acharya Naravinda Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Shri Shri Kodanitai Mayapushashi Ki Jai Shri Radhastami Maha Mahotsava Ki Jai Nitai Gauda Premanandi Haribol. So today is the most auspicious day of Radhastami. Somewhere in the Srimad Bhagavatam in the 10th canto, just around about the appearance of Krishna, Srila Prabhupada writes that when Krishna appears in the material world, then we can know that the Supreme Goddess of Fortune is soon going to appear as well. So even though we celebrate Janmashtami as we should, it's the International Society for Krishna Consciousness. So we celebrate Janmashtami with a huge pomp and ceremony. But Radhastami is at least as important as Janmashtami. And some devotees would even argue that it's more important, but it's at least as important as Radhastami. So it's a very, very important day to celebrate, honor, meditate upon, and today we'll try and say a little something. Sometimes devotees are a little anxious and nervous to speak on Radhastami because the pastimes of Radha and Krishna are very confidential. But as we can at least try to speak about today, although they're confidential, this is also what Lord Chaitanya came to give. So, so we should know the goal, but we should also know how to attain the goal. So we're going to read from the Nectar of Instruction this morning. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So this is text number 11 of the Nectar of Instruction. Who's not read the Nectar of Instruction here? Anyone? Everyone's read Nectar of Instruction? Good. Doxaja, this last verse, I'm always really struggling to get the meter of it. Do you know the meter of this one? It's the Sad Goswami Astakam. Krishna Chai Pranayava Sati Prisabhyo Pirata. You're better than me. Kundam Chasya Munir Bir Abitas Tadrigeva Vyadai Yat Priste Apyalam Asulabam Kim Puna Bhakti Bacham Tat Premedam Sakridapi Saras Natura Vishkaroti. Something like that. So this is the translation. Of the many objects of favoured delight and of all the lovable damsels of Vrajabhumi, Srimati Radharani is certainly the most treasured object of Krishna's love, and in every respect her divine Kund is described by great sages as similarly dear to him. Undoubtedly, Radhakund is very rarely attained even by the great devotees, therefore it is even more difficult for ordinary devotees to attain. If one simply bathes once within these holy waters, one's pure love of Krishna is fully aroused. So Srila Prabhupada's purport. Why is Radhakund so exalted? The lake is so exalted because it belongs to Srimati Radharani, who is the most beloved object of Sri Krishna. Among all the gopis, she is the most beloved. Similarly, her lake, Sri Radhakund, is also described by great sages as the lake that is as dear to Krishna as Radha herself. Indeed, Krishna's love for Radhakund and for Srimati Radharani is the same in all respects. Radhakund is very rarely attained, even by great personalities fully engaged in devotional service. What to speak of ordinary devotees who are only engaged in the practice of Vaidhi Bhakti? It is stated that a devotee will at once develop pure love for Krishna in the wake of the gopis if he once takes a bath in Radha Kund. Srila Rupa Goswami recommends that even if one cannot live permanently on the banks of Radha Kund, he should at least take a bath in the lake as many times as possible. This is a most important item in the execution of devotional service. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur writes in this connection that Sri Radhakund is the most select place for those interested in advancing their devotional service in the wake of the lady friends, Sakhis, and confidential serving maids, Manjaris, of Srimati Radharani. Living entities who are eager to return home to the transcendental kingdom of God, Goloka Vrindavan, by means of attaining their spiritual bodies, Siddha Deha, should live at Radhakund, take shelter of the confidential serving maids of Sri Radha, and under their direction engage constantly in her service. This is the most exalted method for those engaged in devotional service under the protection of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. In this connection, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur writes that even great sages and great devotees like Narada and Sanak do not get an opportunity to come to Radhakund to take their baths. What then to speak of ordinary devotees? If by great fortune one gets an opportunity to come to Radhakund and bathe even once, he can develop his transcendental love for Krishna, exactly as the gopis did. It is also recommended that one should live on the banks of Radhakund and should be absorbed in the loving service of the Lord. One should bathe there regularly and give up all material conceptions, taking shelter of Sri Radha and her assistant gopis. If one is thus constantly engaged during his lifetime, after giving up the body, he will return back to Godhead to serve Sri Radha in the same way as he contemplated during his life on the banks of Radhakund. The conclusion is that to live on the banks of Radhakund and to bathe there daily constitute the highest perfection of devotional service. It is a difficult position to attain, even for great sages and devotees like Narada. Thus, there is no limit to the glory of Sri Radhakund. By serving Radhakund, one can get an opportunity to become an assistant of Srimati Radharani under the eternal guidance of the gopis. Om Jnana-timirandasya Gananjana-shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapatam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Ragunatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parajana Sahitam Shri Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakam Vitamscha Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prasaya Bhutale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namane Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pacharane Nirvishesha Sunyavadi Pastichade Shatarane Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadha Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Vanchakalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubheva patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. So, generally, when we speak about the mission of Lord Chaitanya, we tend to think of and speak about the Sankirtan movement of Lord Chaitanya, that Lord Chaitanya came to inaugurate the Yuga Dharma, the chanting of the holy names of Krishna, as the means to attain perfection in this life, the means for spiritual realization. We understand that there are different methods of self-realization, and that the material universe, just as the material world in which we live goes through different cycles of seasons, so similarly the material universe goes through vast periods of times known as yugas, which are also like different seasons in the material world. Satya Yuga, Treta Yuga, Dwapara Yuga, and Kali Yuga. And according to the different age, then the Lord appears to inaugurate the method of self-realization which is most recommended for the living entities at that particular point in time. So in Kali Yuga, Lord Chaitanya, he came to give the Sankirtan of Krishna's holy names, the chanting of the holy names, particularly the congregational chanting of the holy names. Actually, not just the chanting of the holy names, chanting of the name and the form and the pastimes and the glories of the Lord. This is all Sankirtan. So what we're doing right now is also Sankirtan. Coming together in as a community and speaking about Krishna is also just as much Sankirtan as doing Kirtan, chanting Krishna's names is Sankirtan. So the method that Lord Chaitanya gave is this method of congregational glorification of Krishna. And that's the method of the method of self-realization for all living entities in this age. But he also came for confidential reasons, particularly to taste his own sweetness and to experience the love that his devotees have for him, particularly the love that Srimati Radharani has for him. And so when Lord Chaitanya engaged in Sankirtan, his Sankirtan was particularly the Sankirtan that is infused with the mood of Srimati Radharani. This was particularly the mood that Lord Chaitanya was experiencing Sankirtan in, and this was ultimately the ultimate gift that Lord Chaitanya came to give, was love for Krishna in the mood of the gopis, in the mood of the in this mood of Madhurya Ras, conjugal love. Now, there are always exceptions, and we even see that some of Lord Chaitanya's most confidential devotees were also in, for instance, Sakya Ras, the mood of friendship with Krishna. And particularly the devotees of Lord Nityananda, his confidential associates, and Nityananda Prabhu himself, they were very much in the mood of Sakya-ras friendship. So there's always exceptions. But the general principle is that what Lord Chaitanya ultimately came to give, or at least what he's offering, is pure love for Krishna, pure devotional service in this mood of conjugal love. And we see that the most confidential followers, the chief followers of Lord Chaitanya. And generally, when we speak of the chief followers of Lord Chaitanya, we speak about, in particular, who? Anyone? Yeah, and also the chief followers of Lord Chaitanya. Yeah, and the six Goswamis, the Goswamis of Vrindavan. And Ramananda Roy, who's here, Swarup Damodar Goswami. But those, like we chant, Sri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam. When will Srila Rupa Goswami, who has established within the material world the mission to fulfill the desire of Lord Chaitanya, give me shelter at his lotus feet? So when we speak of the mission of Lord Chaitanya, then the Goswamis of Vrindavan, they were particularly empowered by Lord Chaitanya, and they were particularly given the service by Lord Chaitanya of establishing the mission of Lord Chaitanya with the mood that this mission would continue on into Kali Yuga and ultimately spread throughout the whole world. So therefore the chief of the six Goswamis is Srila Rupa Goswami. So we are known as Rupanugas. That everyone in this room, you are all a Rupanuga Vaishnava devotee, or at least we're aspiring to be Rupanuga Vaishnava devotees. We're followers of Srila Rupa Goswami. And so the teachings, I'm going to have to take this off because otherwise this class is going to get very, very messy. I tried taking some medicine this morning, but it just doesn't seem to be working. So Srila Rupa Goswami is the chief of the six Goswamis, and he is empowered and being given the service by Lord Chaitanya to establish within the material world the mission of Lord Chaitanya. And so Rupa Goswami wrote many, many books. Lord Chaitanya gave the Goswamis particularly the Goswamis who went to Vrindavan, those devotees who were sent to Vrindavan. Because Vrindavan, after Lord Chaitanya's disappearance, during Lord Chaitanya's manifest pastimes, so during Lord Chaitanya's early manifest pastimes, what was the headquarters of Lord Chaitanya's mission? Who can say? No, the early pastimes. Navadvip, Mayapur, Navadvip, and then his later pastimes? Jagannath Puri. So while Lord Chaitanya was present, then for the first half of his pastimes, his Adi Leela, which is described in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, then during his Adi Leela, his headquarters was Sridham Mayapur. And this is also, to this day, the headquarters of the International Society for Krishna Consciousness. Srila Prabhupada actually wanted all members of the International Society for Krishna Consciousness to go to Mayapur every year. So we'd better start saving our pennies because that was Prabhupada's actual intention for all followers. So this was the headquarters during his initial pastimes. And then at the age of 24 years old, who knows how many years Lord Chaitanya's manifest pastimes lasted? Anyone know? 48 years. Lord Chaitanya was on the planet for 48 years. For the first 24 years, his headquarters was in Mayapur. And then at the age of 24, he took sannyas and he went to Jagannath Puri and made Jagannath Puri his headquarters. There are different reasons for that, which we won't go into now, both external and internal. A lot's been written about the significance of Jagannath Puri Dham, but this class is not about Jagannath Puri. But after Lord Chaitanya's disappearance, then the headquarters for the mission of Lord Chaitanya became Vrindavan. And the Goswamis who Lord Chaitanya sent to Vrindavan, he sent them with 3 missions to achieve in Vrindavan. Who knows what those 3 missions were? Anyone? Anyone else? I know you know. Just think of anyone else. Who's that behind there? Hare Krishna, yes, please.
So, excavating the temples in Vrindavan, the places of pastimes of Lord Krishna in Vrindavan, then writing books, scriptures, and third being like giving on this practice of devotional service how to practice devotional service.
Yeah. So generally, it's described that excavating the pastimes, establishing the temples, and writing the books, and then, like you say, ultimately, all of this was with the goal of establishing what is the method of practice for Krishna consciousness. So, because Vrindavan had become a jungle. 5,000 years almost had passed at that time since Krishna had departed from the world, and Vrindavan had become overgrown. The actual places of Krishna's pastimes, Radha and Krishna's pastimes, they had been lost. And so Lord Chaitanya, he sent the Goswamis and asked them to rediscover the places of Krishna's pastimes in Vrindavan, establish temples and deities in those places, and to write books describing the it's interesting, Srila Prabhupada describes, because sometimes we hear about the Bhakti Lata Bij, the creeper of devotion that grows within the heart, or the seed of the creeper of devotion which grows within the heart, which ultimately grows into the tree of love for Krishna within our hearts. So Prabhupada describes in the Chaitanya Charitamrita that the Bhakti Lata Bij, the seed of the creeper of devotion which is planted in the heart, comes in the form of the methods, rules, and regulations by which one practices Krishna consciousness. So in one sense, it's a fact that in the association of devotees, something wonderful is planted within our hearts, but that thing which is planted comes through our own oral reception of hearing devotees describing and explaining the methods, rules, and regulations by which we can practice Krishna consciousness. So the Goswamis, they presented these methods, rules, and regulations. So one could say that these books are the Bhakti Lata Bij. This is the seed of the creeper of devotion. These are the methods, rules, and regulations given by Srila Rupa Goswami and by the other Goswamis. So through these books, then we can learn the method of devotional service, particularly the method of devotional service given by Lord Chaitanya. So also they were asked to excavate the holy places of Krishna's pastimes. But before the Goswamis arrived in Vrindavan, 2 of the holy places were already discovered by Lord Chaitanya. Which 2 places? 2 places very close to each other. Not Govardhan. Yeah, Shamakund and Radhakund. Lord Chaitanya he was on Parakram in Vrindavan, and we were just reading about it just a few weeks ago in Chaitanya Charitamrita. Lord Chaitanya arrived in a village, and he asked a person who lived there, what is the name of this village? And the village was called... Anyone remember? Oh yeah, I remember. I was trying to remember. Who remembers the name of the village? Begins with A. Anyone? You're getting it.
Aristasura was...
Yeah, Aristasura was killed there. So the village was called Aritgram. And then Lord Chaitanya immediately understood this is the place where Aristasura was killed. So Aristasura was the bull demon. He came in the form of a bull. You can read about this in Krishna book. And he caused havoc throughout Vrindavan. And then Krishna killed him. And after killing Aristasura, Krishna went to enjoy his pastimes with the gopis. And the gopis wouldn't... It was all part of their play, but the gopis wouldn't engage in pastimes with Krishna because they said, well, you've just killed a bull, and the bull is the symbol of religion. And so you're so sinful that we don't want anything to do with you. And Krishna said, yeah, he wasn't a bull. He was a demon in the shape of a bull. And they said, it doesn't matter. He was still in the form of a bull. So we can't engage in pastimes with you until you've atoned for your sins. And so Krishna said, well, what do I need to do? He wanted to quickly sort of get things done so that he can enjoy his pastimes with the gopis, particularly with Radharani. And so they said, you need to go and bathe in all the holy places all over the universe. So Krishna thought, well, that's going to take a long time. So let's bring all the holy places here. So then he stamped his foot into the ground and he made a big crater in the ground, and then he called all the holy waters personified in the universe to come there and to enter into that lake, into that depression in the ground, and then this became Shamakund. So Krishna bathed in Shamakund, and then he invited the gopis to come and bathe in Shamakund. Oh no, then the gopis said, so okay, now we can have pastimes. And Krishna said, no, I'm not having pastimes with you. You took the side of a demon. so you're going to have to bathe in all the sacred rivers personified, So they then created, there's different ways in which this pastime is described. It wasn't even in my notes to speak about this. Somehow Krishna has different plans. But anyway, the gopis, they took their bangles. They broke off their bangles. Bangles are called kankan or kanchan. So they broke their bangles and they used the bangles to create a hole in the ground. And then they formed a big chain to Manasi Ganga so that they could bring the Ganga, so that they could have their own kund there. And then Krishna was looking at what hard work it was for the gopis. So then he asked the sacred livers to enter into Radharani's kund. And then that became Radha Kund. And then Radha Kund became the favorite place for Radha and Krishna to perform their pastimes. So, and then when Lord Chaitanya arrived at Aritgram, then he could understand that this is where Radhakund and Shamakund were. So he explored the place and he found two tiny little ponds, not even ponds, just tiny little sort of depressions in the ground with water, and he could understand that this is Radhakund and Shamakund, and he bathed there. And then he actually sent one of the 6 Goswamis to reside in Radhakund. Anyone know who? Anyone else know who? Who? Anyone? Go on. Who was it that Lord Chaitanya sent to stay at Radhakund? Who was the Goswami who made that his place of residence, or Lord Chaitanya gave it him as his gift? Not Rupa Goswami. Raghunath Das Goswami. Raghunath Das Goswami. So Raghunath Das excavated Radhakund and he made it bigger because he could understand that as the Sankirtan movement spreads throughout the whole world, then more and more people will come to bathe in Radhakund. So when you go there now, it's a big lake with steps, and it's a really wonderful place, really, really, really wonderful place. And all around Radhakund, there are the samadhis and bhajan-kritiyas of the Goswamis and the followers of Lord Chaitanya, and it's just a magical, magical place. There's the bathing place of Janava Devi, the wife of Lord Nityananda. She has her own private bathing place there, and just the whole of Radhakund is really, really wonderful. So in this way, we are followers of the 6 Goswamis, we are Rupanugas, we're followers of Srila Rupa Goswami, and the ultimate and confidential, but not secret, it's not a secret, but the most confidential gift that Lord Chaitanya is giving is he is offering us the opportunity to enter into the dancing party of Srimati Radharani and the dancing party of Radha and Krishna. Now, way back, probably in the early to mid 1970s, one devotee was giving class in one temple. I don't know which temple and I don't know which devotee, but it's a well-known story. And he was presenting to the devotees that going out on book distribution and Harinam Sankirtan is the same as engaging in the Rasa Leela pastimes of Radha and Krishna. So the devotees were very concerned about this because prior to this, Srila Prabhupada had given warnings, cautioning the devotees not to enter too deeply into the more confidential aspects of Krishna's pastimes until they became qualified. So when this devotee was saying this, the other devotees were concerned that, well, this sounds a little too esoteric. And so some devotees wrote to Srila Prabhupada to say, well, this is what's being said. Is this a correct understanding? And Srila Prabhupada wrote back and said that this is the proper understanding because we are going out to bring the fallen conditioned souls into the service of Radha and Krishna. Ultimately, this is the the truths of Krishna consciousness and the chanting of the Hare Krishna mantra can be understood on many, many levels. There are sort of what you may call, like for instance with Lord Chaitanya's pastimes, he has the external reasons for his pastimes and the internal reasons for his pastimes. So, Krishna consciousness, the Hare Krishna mantra, the Bhagavad Gita, all these different sources of knowledge and inspiration in our bhakti, we can understand them on many, many levels. But the deeper understanding of the chanting of Hare Krishna is that we are bringing Radha and Krishna together for their pastimes. Hare Krishna. Hare is Srimati Radharani, and Krishna and Rama, this is Krishna. So by chanting Hare Krishna, we are bringing Radha and Krishna together for their pastimes. When Vyasaki Prabhu was here, and again, this is sometimes on these days, we sort of go a little deeper into the more confidential things. When Vyasaki Prabhu was here, was about 2.5 years ago, and he was saying that Sankirtan is like engaging in the Rasa Leela pastimes of Radha and Krishna, and chanting of japa is entering into the confidential groves of Radha and Krishna. It's a more personal pastime, whereas Sankirtan, we're all coming together to engage in these pastimes. So, this is ultimately the mood, particularly of the manjaris. In the purport that we just read there, Prabhupada referred to the Sakis and the manjaris. So the Sakis, these are the close friends of Srimati Radharani, such as Lalita and Vishaka, the Ashtasakis. These are the close personal friends of Radharani. And then the manjaris, these are the serving maids who assist the gopis in assisting Radharani. So Lord Chaitanya, he says, Naham vipro nacha narapatir napi vaisho nasrudro naham vani nacha grihapatir navanasto yateva kintu pro jan nikila paravananda purnam ritabdir gopi batu padakamalaya das dasanudas. He says, I'm not Brahman, I'm not a Kshatriya, I'm not a Vaishya, I'm not a Shudra, I'm not a Brahmachari or a Grihasta or a Vanaprastha or a Sannyas, but I am the servant of the servant of the servant of the serving maids of Radha and Krishna. Gopi Batu Padakamaleo Das Das Anudas, the servant of the servant of the servant. So the gopis are the servants of Srimati Radharani, and the manjaris are the servants of Srimati Radharani. So the Goswamis, their eternal constitutional position within Radha and Krishna's pastimes is that they are manjaris, they are serving maids of Radha and Krishna. So, for instance, Srila Rupa Goswami is Rupa Manjari, and their mood is that they want to arrange for increasing and heightening and enlivening and beautifying the pastimes of Radha and Krishna. They want to bring more and more people into those pastimes so that more and more and more can be done to serve Radha and Krishna. Like, when we have a festival, like when we had Festival of Colors, we had Janmastami. So there are so many services that are going on day after day, but then we have a big festival and we bring as many people together as possible and engage as many people as possible together in service. So, like on Balaram's appearance day, we don't normally have an Abhishek, but then on Balaram's appearance day, Gandaki Prabhu and Sharanga Prabhu, they arrange for more and more services to be done. And we have more and more cooking, more feasts, more offerings, more kirtans, more decorations, more flowers, more outfits. We want to get more and more and more and more devotees together so that we can do more and more and more and more service. And so ultimately, the deities have a more wonderful service offered to them. So in the spiritual world, every day is a festival. Unfortunately, right now, due to financial and manpower and so many other considerations, we're not able to do quite as grand festivals all the time. But in the spiritual world, every day is a festival. So the mood of the Manjaris is that they want to bring more and more devotees together to enrich the pastimes of Radha and Krishna. So similarly, when those same devotees come to the material world, as Rupa Goswami and the Goswamis of Vrindavan, their mood is that they want to bring people, more and more and more people, into the confidential service of their eternal lords, Radha and Krishna, to enrich those pastimes more and more and more. And so, Sankirtan means going out, making people Krishna conscious and bringing more and more people into the eternal pastimes. This is what's happening here. Chaitanya and Nityananda and their Sankirtan movement, these are the eternal pastimes of the Chaitanya Charitamrita. What is happening today in the Krishna consciousness movement is just writing more and more chapters in the Chaitanya Charitamrita. We have the Adi Leela, the Madhya Leela, and the Antya Leela, but then so many more chapters and so many more Leelas are being written year after year because their pastimes are still continuing as Kali Yuga goes on and as the Sankirtan movement grows more and more and more. So this is the mood of the Goswamis, and Rupa Goswami, who wrote the Nectar of Instruction, the Upadeshamrita, he is one of the most confidential maidservants of Srimati Radharani in his original form, Srila Rupa Manjari. And so he's qualified. He is most qualified to show us how to actually enter into those pastimes. He is as close as you can get to the pastimes of Radha and Krishna. So if anyone is qualified to show us how to actually become qualified ourselves to enter into those pastimes, it's Rupa Goswami. And so because this is the goal of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's mission, to ultimately give us all the opportunity of entering into these pastimes, then he has empowered and given the responsibility to one who is most qualified to show us how to actually become qualified, that we ourselves can enter into those pastimes. So what we just read there, this comes right at the end of the Nectar of Instruction. Who knows how many verses there are in the Nectar of Instruction? It's not many. 11. Yeah, 11 verses. So, the books of devotees like Rupa Goswami, they give us the ultimate goal, but they also give the means to attain that ultimate goal by following the instructions in the book. So it's not enough just to know the goal. We can speak about Radharani, Radha and Krishna, Vrindavan, Radha Kund, Shyama Kund. We can speak about all these things. And not only can we speak about these things, but actually we should speak about these things because we need to know what is the goal that we're actually aspiring for. This is actually the goal. If we say, well, you're going to London, where am I going to London? Doesn't matter. It doesn't matter where you're going. No, I need to know where I'm going. I want to know where I'm going because then I'll be motivated to actually go there. Tell you, okay, you're going to Bhaktivedanta Mana. Why do I want to go to Bhaktivedanta Mana? Here's a picture of Radha Gokulananda. That's why you want to go to Bhaktivedanta Mana. And you see Radha Gokulananda. Yeah, I definitely want to go to Bhaktivedanta Mana. Right, how do I get there? Okay, you take this road and this road and this road and this road. So Rupa Goswami, he gives Vrindavan in his books. He gives descriptions of the highest goal, but he also gives the means to attain it. So in the Nectar of Instruction, 11 verses, the last 3 verses in particular, they describe and establish the ultimate goal for the followers of Lord Chaitanya. The service of Srimati Radharani, the service of Radha and Krishna, Vrindavan, and ultimately Sri Radha Kund. This is the topmost goal, the topmost gift of Lord Chaitanya. But first of all, he gives the means by which we can actually attain that goal. And it's very, very important to understand that in order to be able to attain that goal, we have to become qualified. So we can know what is the goal, But we also need to understand that without qualification, we cannot enter deeply. Even in this life, we can, we won't, we've spoken about it many times before, but there are the eternal pastimes of Krishna and the occasional pastimes of Krishna, and we should hear all of them. When you read Krishna book, the two books of Srila Prabhupada, which generally speaking devotees give to newcomers of Krishna consciousness, are the Bhagavad Gita and Krishna book. These are the two sort of foundational texts. Read the Bhagavad Gita during the day, read Krishna book at night. And that's recommended for absolutely everyone. And in Krishna book, we hear about Krishna's attracting the gopis with his flute, Krishna's hiding from the gopis, Krishna's meeting with the gopis, Krishna's dancing with the gopis, Krishna's performing all these confidential pastimes with the gopis. It's not a secret thing. It's right there in Krishna book. But in order to become qualified to enter deeply within those pastimes, then it's recommended that we carefully study the occasional pastimes of Krishna, such as Krishna's killing the demons, such as Krishna's expanding himself into the cows and cowherd boys when Brahma kidnaps them, such as Krishna's lifting Govardhan Hill to protect Vrindavan from the rainfall of Indra, such as Krishna's delivering Nalakuvera and Manigriva, the twin Arjuna trees. So these are all occasional pastimes, and by very, very carefully and attentively studying and entering deeply into those pastimes, then the unwanted things within the heart, which are preventing us from becoming qualified to enter into the deeper and more confidential eternal pastimes of Krishna, they become removed. So we should be familiar with all of the pastimes of Krishna. But in terms of the eternal, very, very confidential pastimes of Krishna, we should know them, we should be familiar with them. But in order to really enter into dive deeply within the depths of those pastimes, we have to become qualified. So Rupa Goswami in the Nectar of Instruction, he tells us, here is the goal, here is Radharani, here is Radhakund, here are the pastimes of Radha and Krishna. Now, this is what you have to do to actually become qualified to enter into those pastimes, to actually become qualified to earn a place within those pastimes eternally. And like Prabhupada was saying there, the topmost realm of the spiritual world, Goloka Vrindavan. So first of all, the first thing that Rupa Goswami explains is that we have to learn to control ourselves. We have to learn to control ourselves. We can't give to others what we don't have. So first of all, in text 1, can just read it quickly. We may not read the whole text now because I don't want to go too much over time. But he says, so it's all about controlling ourselves. First of all, control the 6 urges. A sober person who can tolerate the urge to speak, the mind's demands, the actions of anger, and the urges of the tongue, belly, and genitals is qualified to make disciples all over the world. Secondly, what are the things that we should avoid in our life? What are the 6 obstacles to devotional service? One's devotional service is spoiled when he becomes too entangled in the following 6 activities: eating more than necessary or collecting more funds than required, over-endeavoring for mundane things that are very difficult to obtain, talking unnecessarily about mundane subject matters, practicing the scriptural rules and regulations only for the sake of following them, and not for the sake of spiritual advancement, or rejecting the rules and regulations of the scriptures and working independently or whimsically. Associating with worldly-minded persons who are not interested in Krishna consciousness, and being greedy for mundane achievements. So this is practical. This is practical advice for everyone. These are things that we should know we have to avoid. So we should learn these verses and remember them and remind ourselves that these are the things that we need to avoid in life if we actually want to be successful. And as Prabhupada says in the Nectar of Devotion, there are things to be avoided and there are things to be accepted. Just like we abstain from no illicit sex, no meat eating, no intoxication, no gambling. So those are the things we don't do. But there's also things we do. We chant Hare Krishna, we offer our food to Krishna, we worship the deity. These are the things we do. So here he also says these are the things we should adopt in our life to help us in our devotional service. There are 6 principles favorable to the execution of pure devotional service: being enthusiastic, endeavoring with confidence, being patient, acting according to regulative principles, such as Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu Smaranam, hearing, chanting, and remembering Krishna, abandoning the association of non-devotees, and following in the footsteps of the previous acharyas. These 6 principles undoubtedly assure the complete success of pure devotional service. And then once we've learned how to control ourselves, then we become more qualified and capable to understand how to associate with others. So in the next 3 verses, he describes the 6 loving exchanges which take place between devotees, how to associate with different devotees according to their level of advancement, and how to associate with and see pure devotees and our gurus. So he says, offering gifts in charity, accepting charitable gifts, revealing one's mind in confidence, inquiring confidentially, accepting prasad, and offering prasad are the 6 symptoms of love shared by one devotee and another. So this society was set up in order to facilitate the 6 loving exchanges. Prabhupada says that in his purport to that verse. The reason the International Society for Krishna Consciousness was created was to facilitate the 6 loving exchanges. So we need to look at this occasion and think, well, am I offering gifts to the devotees? Am I receiving gifts? Am I offering prasad? Am I receiving prasad? Am I revealing my mind in confidence? Am I inquiring confidentially? And if not, how can I do more and more of that? Because that's the reason ISKCON exists, is to facilitate these loving exchanges. And then he teaches us how to actually associate with different devotees. One should mentally honor the devotee who chants the holy name of Lord Krishna. One should offer humble obeisances to the devotee who has undergone spiritual initiation diksha and is engaged in worshipping the deity. And one should associate with and faithfully serve that pure devotee who has advanced in undeviated devotional service and whose heart is completely devoid of the propensity to criticize others. So according to the different devotees that we associate with them in different ways. Sanatana Goswami also explains that from a senior devotee to a junior devotee, affection should flow naturally, just as water flows from a high place to a lower. And from a junior devotee to a senior devotee, respect should rise naturally, like smoke rises from fire. And then between friends, there should be mutual friendship, love, and appreciation. So there is a difference. And then he describes how to deal with the topmost devotees. Being situated in his original Krishna conscious position, a pure devotee does not identify with the body. Such a devotee should not be seen from a materialistic point of view. Indeed, one should overlook a devotee as having a body born in a low family, a body with a bad complexion, a deformed body, or a diseased or infirm body. According to ordinary vision, such imperfections may seem prominent in the body of a pure devotee, but despite such seeming defects, the body of a pure devotee cannot be polluted. It is exactly like the waters of the Ganges, which during the rainy season are sometimes full of bubbles, foam, and mud. The Ganges waters do not become polluted. Those who are advanced in spiritual understanding will bathe in the Ganges without considering the condition of the water. So in this way, he's taught us, first of all, how to control ourselves, and then how to associate with others. And then in the next 2 verses, he describes what is our internal development. What do we need to be doing internally in order to become qualified to reach this ultimate goal, which he's going to describe next. So first of all, he describes how chanting the holy name purifies the heart of jaundice and ignorance and gives knowledge. The holy name, character, pastimes, and activities of Krishna are all transcendently sweet like sugar candy. Although the tongue of one afflicted by the jaundice of avidya, ignorance, cannot taste anything sweet, it is wonderful that simply by carefully chanting these sweet names every day, a natural relish awakens within his tongue, and his disease is gradually destroyed at the root. And then the essence of all advice is described in text 8. The essence of all advice is that one should utilize one's full time 24 hours a day in nicely chanting and remembering the Lord's divine name, transcendental form, qualities, and eternal pastimes, thereby gradually engaging one's tongue and mind. In this way, one should reside in Vraj, Goloka Vrindavan Dham, and serve Krishna under the guidance of devotees. One should follow in the footsteps of the Lord's beloved devotees who are deeply attached to his devotional service. So in this way, in 8 verses, Rupa Goswami has told us what we need to do externally, control our senses. What are the things that we should do externally? What are the things that we shouldn't do? What are the things to be rejected? What are the things to be adopted in terms of our lifestyle? And he's taught us how to associate with others, particularly how to associate with other devotees, because one cannot be successful in Krishna consciousness without association of devotees. And then he's taught us what should be the internal development that should be going on in order that we can become purified and qualified. So if we follow these 8 guidelines that he gives, and if we make these our lifestyle choices, and there's a lot contained within a very small amount. It's 8 verses, but you can unpack those 8 verses for years and years and years. There's an awful lot contained within those 8 verses. But this is a book that you can read in one day if you have a study day. You can read this whole book in one day, and it's definitely a book to be studied and memorized, because this is our life. This book describes the life of a devotee. So you want to be a devotee? This is what you do. And then if we can do that, then the holy place known as Mathura is spiritually superior to Vaikuntha, the transcendental world, because the Lord appeared there. Superior to Mathura Puri is the transcendental forest of Vrindavan, because of Krishna's Rasa Leela pastimes. And superior to the forest of Vrindavan is Govardhan Hill, for it was raised by the divine hand of Sri Krishna and was the site of his various loving pastimes. And above all, the super excellent Sri Radhakund stands supreme, for it is overflooded with the ambrosial nectarian prema of the Lord of Gokul, Sri Krishna. Where then is that intelligent person who is unwilling to serve this divine Radhakund, which is situated at the foot of Govardhan Hill? So this was a hierarchy of the different regions of the material and spiritual worlds. And then in the next verse, he describes the hierarchy of different people, particularly different types of human beings. He says, in the Shastra it is said that of all types of fruitive workers, he who is advanced in knowledge of the higher values of life is favored by the Supreme Lord Hari. Out of many such people who are advanced in knowledge, Gyanis, one who is practically liberated by virtue of his knowledge may take to devotional service. He is superior to the others. However, one who has actually attained prema, pure love of Krishna, is superior to him. The gopis are exalted above all the advanced devotees because they are always totally dependent upon Sri Krishna, the transcendental cowherd boy. Among the gopis, Srimati Radharani is the most dear to Krishna. Her kund is as profoundly dear to Lord Krishna as this most beloved of the gopis. Who then will not reside at Radha Kund? And in a spiritual body surcharged with ecstatic devotional feelings, aprakrita bhav, render loving service to the divine couple Sri Sri Radha Govinda, who perform the Ashtakaliya Leela, their eternal 8-fold daily pastimes. Indeed, those who execute devotional service on the banks of Radha Kund are the most fortunate people in the universe. And then Rupa Goswami describes the ultimate goal. Of the many objects of favoured delight and of all the lovable damsels of Vrajabhumi, Srimati Radharani is certainly the most treasured object of Krishna's love. And in every respect, her divine kund is described by great sages as similarly dear to him. Undoubtedly, Radha Kund is very rarely attained even by the great devotees, therefore it is even more difficult for ordinary devotees to attain. If one simply bathes once within those holy waters, one's pure love of Krishna is fully aroused. Srila Rupa Goswami Prabhupada ki jai, Sri Rupa Deshamrita ki jai. So we'll just finish on one last little anecdote, which is that when Srila Prabhupada had written the Nectar of Instruction, he sent the manuscript to the BBT, the Bhaktivedanta Book Trust. So generally the sort of method and practice was that they would receive the manuscript from Srila Prabhupada, they would look through it, and based on the content of the book, they would decide how many of these should be printed. So, for instance, the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna book, these were books to be printed in huge numbers because they were meant for mass distribution to people all around the world. And then maybe books like the fifth canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, which describes the structure of the universe and the hellish regions, these kind of things. That wasn't for mass distribution because it would confuse and maybe disturb people. So according to the content of the book, they would determine, well, how many should we print? Who are these books actually meant for? So when they received the Nectar of Instruction, the devotee who is Jayadvaita Maharaj, and he really loves telling this story himself. He really looks back on this fondly. He read through the book, and particularly the last 3 verses, which described Radhakund and Srimati Radharani. His decision was that this is very, very confidential information, and so we shouldn't print too many of these books. This is really meant just for the devotees. And then they sent that decision to Srila Prabhupada. And Srila Prabhupada wrote back and said, why only 5,000 copies? Print 100,000 copies. This book is meant for people all around the world. This book tells you how to be a devotee, and our goal is to show people how to be a devotee. So Prabhupada's mood was that this book is meant for everybody, because although it gives very, very confidential revelations about the ultimate highest goal of life and the ultimate highest goal of worship, Srimati Radharani, it also tells us how we can become qualified to actually enter into that service. So on a day like today, we can remember that the service of Srimati Radharani's lotus feet and to reside in her place of pastimes is the topmost goal, and it is the gift that Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is offering to each and every one of us. But on this day as well, we should also remember and meditate on the need and the method to attain qualification for that goal. So we can meditate on the goal, but also the means to attain that goal. So we'll stop there. Apologize, we went over just a few minutes. Do we have time for questions or comments, or should we just wrap up there so that you can decide? Okay, one question. Anyone have one question? Raghunath.
Yes, I thought it's an important question. So it's the last verse explains that the best place to be is Radhakund. Like some devotees took it completely literally.
Some people.
Some devotees took it very literally. This instruction went to Radhakund and took initiation from Babaji there.
Yeah.
Can you say some comments?
So once again, qualification. Not only qualification, but also, we already sort of covered that. What is the service of Radharani in the material world? The service to Srimati Radharani in the material world is to go out and to give Krishna consciousness to others, not just to sit in Radhakund and do bhajan. Now, Prabhupada, not so much Radhakund, but Prabhupada did indicate that once devotees reached a certain age and stage of development, then they could go to Vrindavan or Mayapur and they could focus more on internal development, bhajan as we say. So he favored that, but within certain parameters. He wanted things to be done as followers, because we're not only Rupanugas, we're also Prabhupada-nugas. We're not only followers of Srila Rupa Goswami, but we're followers of Srila Prabhupada. So Prabhupada, and this is how the parampara works. As each acharya comes, then they give instructions as to how we can practically apply the teachings of the previous acharyas. So Srila Prabhupada gave ISKCON as a sort of vehicle in which to serve Radha and Krishna and in which to serve the mission of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So, and in Radhakund, ISKCON has a temple. We have, I think, 2 or 3 temples in Radhakund. In fact, the Samadhi of Srila Bhakti Swarup Damodar Goswami Maharaj is in Radhakund. So, Radhakund is definitely a place where Prabhupada wanted us to go. He wanted us to bathe in Radhakund. That's also a controversial thing. He makes it very clear in the Nectar Instruction that he wanted us to bathe in Radhakund, but he also showed by his own quite stern instructions that you're only to do that if you can do it in a proper, respectful way and not just go leaping around in Radhakund. So, Prabhupada said, first deserve and then desire. So first deserve to do something before we start trying to enter into these very, very confidential areas of both of service and places of service. We have to become qualified. And we're not, our line, particularly in coming from Srila Prabhupada, our line is not a line of Babajis. We're what is it, Goshti and Andis. Prabhupada really emphasized giving Krishna consciousness to others. And we can see by history that people have gone to Radhakund, tried to become like Babajis, tried to enter into, what is it they call, is it Nirjan Bhajan, like this internal worship, is that the term, Nirjan Bhajan? Is that right? Nirjan Bhajan. So, and it's gone wrong. It's like they've not been qualified, and so things go wrong for them. In their devotional practices, they become. One of the things that Prabhupada warned strongly about was like sahajarism, taking things cheaply. We dress like a Babaji, we live like a Babaji, but that doesn't mean we are a Babaji. But actually, just on Saturday, Shivaram Swami Maharaj was giving class at Bhaktivedanta Mana. And he was saying that, when we go out for a drive in a car, we see there's so many obstacles and so many warnings that are there. So many road signs, beware of this, beware of this, beware of this. It doesn't mean that we don't go anywhere anymore. It doesn't mean that we think that's it, I'm just never going out again because there's just too many things to avoid there. So in the same way, the goal is there, but there are also a lot of warnings that, be very careful. Don't become a sahajya, don't enter into things before you're ready. Don't do this, don't do that. And so sometimes devotees think, okay, Radhakund, Radharani, Radha and Krishna, Vrindavan, it's just, I'm not qualified, so I'm not even going to think about it. No, that's where we're going. But keep your eye out for the road signs. And keep an eye on the map and make sure you're going in the right direction and make sure that you're qualified. And that's why we need Guru, Sadhu, and Shastra. We need to have people in our lives who we can actually take shelter of and get regular help and guidance and direction from to make sure, am I actually going in the right direction? Am I reading the right books? Am I studying the right books? Am I chanting in the right way? Am I doing service in the right way? Because I want to go back to Vrindavan, but I want to make sure that I haven't accidentally taken a wrong turning somewhere and I'm heading for somewhere else. So the goal is there, but the warnings are also in place to keep us on the right path. Do you want to add anything to that, Raghunath? Would you like to sort of add anything or expand to that at all?
So some comment that Shivaram Swami says in some of the devotees that living in Radhakund is not necessarily a physical experience, but like living in Vrindavan, being in a mission, of course going to recharge batteries to Vrindavan.
Yeah.
But then, in the mind that you're thinking about Vrindavan and living in Vrindavan. Yeah,
it's a state of consciousness. The holy Dham is a state of consciousness. You can be in Vrindavan, and I have experience of it. I don't know if anyone else has experience of it. I've been in Vrindavan and been thinking about anything but Vrindavan, and I've been out on Sankirtan and been thinking all about Radhakund. So it's not, as one singer that I used to like listening to used to say, it's not where you are, it's where you're at. So it's not where you are, it's where you're at. So, Prabhupada did want us to go to Vrindavan and Mayapur, but like you say, recharge those batteries, get good association, get kirtan. When you're in these places, you feel the atmosphere and you can feel yourself becoming sort of strengthened. if you do it in the right way. But then we want to go and give Vrindavan to the world. That's the whole thing. Give Vrindavan to the world, and a devotee sees with his ears or sees with her ears. So the Goswamis, their descriptions of Vrindavan are non-different from Vrindavan. By hearing about Vrindavan in the right way from the right people, we are in Vrindavan. We're able to enter into Vrindavan by hearing about Vrindavan. Whereas you go to Vrindavan, depending on your state of consciousness, what you might see are hogs and dogs and monkeys and, hotels and restaurants and all sorts of weird and wonderful things. So it's not where you are, it's where you're at. But if you can be at Vrindavan, in Vrindavan, then that's a really good thing. But also we want to give Vrindavan to the world. And therefore, we want to give the nectar of instruction to the whole world so that they can get both Vrindavan and the means to attain Vrindavan. Is that okay? Okay, we'll stop there. Shri Vrindavan Dham ki jai, Shri Mati Radharani ki jai, Shri Radhastami Maha Mahotsava ki jai, Shri La Prabhupada ki jai, Shri Vaishnav Sangha Vaishnav Seva ki jai, Nitai Gaura Premanandi Hari Bol. Gaura Bhakta Vrinda ki jai.
Hare Krishna. So thanks very much to Ramananda Prabhu for this wonderful presentation. But this is just a beginning today. We have a 4-hour japathon now until 12:30. There will be small services as well to be shared among a few people. So we'll do a similar thing as yesterday, that a few devotees, one devotee will serve prasada, another devotee will clean up, another devotee do pots, another devotee do flowers, so like that, so that we can take as much as possible advantage of this day. So until 12:30 is fasting and chanting and a bit of service, and then we'll break the fast at 12:30 with some nice prasadam. And from 1:30 till 5:30 we have a 4-hour kirtan. And then there's an evening program as well from 5:30 to 6:30. Will be 3 bhajans and 1 talk, followed by Gaura Arati, and then and the feast. Hare Krishna. And for those who are online, we posted on Facebook and YouTube and WhatsApp the link to the Zoom that you are welcome to join in and chant with us for the next few hours. Hare Krishna. Oh yeah, and reminder for devotees to test themselves. We have a LFT test outside. And so just after the festival colors, just making sure that we all are healthy. Thank you.